morning, everybody. I am Tony Sklar with bnetTV. I am here at the CTIA Enterprise and Applications Conference in San Diego. I am joined by Mr. Andy Miller, CEO of Polycom, and John Walls, VP of Public Affairs for CTIA. How are you gentlemen this morning?
Great. Good morning.
Doing great. Thanks for having us.
Fantastic. This is such a great and exciting conference of the fall. Congratulations again on a packed house.
Yep.
Always good to be here. And so listen, for our first-time viewers, John, I'm going to jump right to you. Why don't you jump right into what is going on here at the CTIA Enterprise and Applications Forum?
Well, thanks, Tony. I would say at first I'd like to single-handedly take credit for all this, but I can't. We've got a great crew in the operations staff that puts together our shows, the fall show and the spring show, and we looked at this show a few years ago and saw as the market was evolving, and it was an entertainment slant to it. For many people would remember that, and we just thought that really an enterprise-focused show made sense. Applications being more prominent. And so let's marry those two concepts up and bring that community together. And we thought we'd bring all facets of that ecosystem together, and hopefully that's what we're achieving here.
Andy, I think that you could probably attest to the idea that this entertainment style show, application driven, has moved right into the enterprise marketplace. And why, I'm going to hand it right over to you on why don't you show us Polycom's position on why you're here.
Well, actually, this is our first time we've been here. This is our first foray into the mobility area. We announced this morning what's called real presence mobile applications. So it's actually extending the UC applications onto tablets and smartphones. So for us, it's an exciting place to be. It's new for us, but our announcement came out crack of dawn this morning, and it's a very exciting time for our company and for the industry, actually.
It is fantastic for the industry. You know, just on the heels of last week's sad news of Steve Jobs, but what an impact he has made on this industry as a whole when it comes to tablets and applications as a whole. It's pretty exciting to see everybody on this show floor be buzzed up with the idea of running for lots of applications and lots of lots of bandwidth that we're going to need to be able to use that. So it is an exciting time to be here. What are some of the focuses, John, that you can tell us about during this this conference that we're going to be seeing?
Well, you hit some interesting points there. But when you look at what's happened with the iPad and with the iPhone, particularly, I mean, truly iconic devices. There's no question about that, and the impact of Steve Jobs is indelible, I think, from this point forward. But in terms of what people are doing with their devices these days, the enterprise and in consumer use, you hit the bandwidth issue. We think that really leverages or puts a really bright spotlight on the spectrum issues we have in the United States. We're talking about that a lot this morning and throughout the show. The fact is that we don't have a national broadband plan, if you will. The FCC has proposed one. We see other countries who have made very generous allotments to spectrum down the road. And we think the United States, in order to maintain its lead as the preeminent wireless market in the country, in the world, we need more spectrum, plain and simple. And really the iPhone and the iPod or the iPad have really driven that use to where Cisco's now telling us 40 to 50 times demand by the year 2016. And we just doubled our data traffic from last year to this year. We're going to be releasing that in a little bit. So you have this exponential increase in data use, data traffic, people using smartphones. We had a 40% increase in smartphone use last year to this year. We've achieved 100% penetration now in the US, 104. We'll be releasing that.
Very high numbers.
Huge numbers. And so it all says people love the devices, they love the technology, they love what it's doing for them, they want more of it. And this show is a testimony to that, and we think the spectrum need certainly is a glaring need in that respect.
Andy, based on John's comments, what can you say, what does that do for Polycom when we're talking about spectrum and those particular needs?
Well, absolutely. The requirement as video becomes more focused in the mobile world. If you look at the applications that are out there, it's a very visual society now. You look at the number of tablets that will be out there by 2016, let alone the spectrum. By putting video on 3G, 4G, LTE, it is going to drive high requirement for additional bandwidth and additional spectrum. And I think it's right in our face right now, this issue, because applications like Polycom announced this morning and other visual aspects of mobile are going to require exactly what you said. So I think it's an issue. I think that what we've demonstrated in terms of mobile to mobile, but more importantly, mobile back into enterprise, is going to drive that at even a more accelerated rate than Gartner and IDC and Forrester actually predict.
Let's talk a little bit about the impact on the economics of our current situation in North America and globally. More connected devices, this portion of the economy is not slowing down. Does that mean that this is going to lead us out of a recession?
We think we're a driver from an industry standpoint. That when you look at what's happening in America today, and obviously the bailout situations that have occurred in the last 2-3 years are well documented, but we don't know of too many other industries that have this positive economic value that they bring to the national table. We have an opportunity. We think various studies have shown that with broadband allotments and spectrum being brought to market in substantial swaths, that we can have an additional $450 to our gross domestic product, or $450 billion rather, over the next 10 years. That we're looking about between 500 and 700,000 new jobs, and at the same time, the industry is willing to step up and write $30 billion, $35 billion collective checks to the Treasury to buy access to that spectrum. I don't know too many industries these days who want to go to the federal government and say, let us give you that kind of money in order for us to fuel the American economy. We would like that right. We'd like that privilege. And that's why, again, why we are laser focused on the spectrum issue, because there are so many positives to be gained from an American standpoint, from an industry standpoint, and ultimately from an end user standpoint.
Andy, I'd like to ask you, I want to circle back to the spectrum issue here in just a second, but from an economic standpoint, is it the right time for companies to be investing in infrastructure?
I think clearly, I think the entire focus around what we do for a living at Polycom is about improving productivity for businesses. And I think the visual aspect of improving productivity, how do you differentiate yourself, how do you drive additional revenue, is all around that entire total cost of ownership, return on investment, all the things we've talked about around productivity. So I believe strongly that the productivity enhancements from this type of technology, collaboration technology, rather than just plain audio, but in the entire spectrum of collaboration, video, web, and audio together, will actually drive productivity and therefore help drive economic conditions.
That collective integration of moving video, which has always been it's always been a sticking point within our current infrastructures right now. Everybody wants to eat video. We want it in our homes, we want it on our devices, we want to move from the device to home, we want it back and forth wherever we want that. Right. But the spectrum hasn't been there to allow that throughput. Now we've got LTE coming in, it's being disseminated by carriers, which is fantastic, but we've got a spectrum differential globally. What are we going to do about that?
Andy, what are we going to do about that?
Gentlemen, what are we going to do about that?
Let me just first add on, outside of the spectrum issue, one of the big issues has been around open standards and interoperability. So it wasn't just bandwidth, it was around the approach of being agnostic to the platform. Our focus has always been around open standards and interoperability amongst carriers, amongst platforms, amongst technology. Whether it's 3G, 4G, LTE, depending upon whether it's SIP, whether it's 323, all the different protocols that are out there. The focus around the Unified Communication Interoperability Forum is all set for the purpose of interoperability amongst carriers and open standards. The spectrum issue I'll hand off to you, but I think that's a key message
like
really to be understood.
Right.
Right.
Yeah, that's
well, another issue too that Andy's brought up indirectly, but I do think is an important issue as well when we talk about what the productivities that businesses are achieving today. And again, we'll be talking about this shortly, Steve will from the stage, is in the area of sustainability. And being more environmentally responsible, and at the same time being more cost efficient with your delivery of goods and services, and having an improvement on your bottom line. And what wireless can do in that respect, you see it obviously in with Polycom, reduce travel, for example, and fleet management, all those kinds of tools that are out there. We're seeing it in agriculture, we see it in public services, we're seeing it in utilities. But there's a tremendous upside, we think, in terms of how the technology is deployed in the future that can not only be a more sustainable existence, for that industry or that vertical, but also improve their bottom line and improve their efficiency and their productivity. And that's a huge win, which I think is right into the Polycom sweet spot.
I was just going to throw that right back at you.
I think you hit on one word that we love, which is vertical. Because there's several vertical markets where this application is critically important. Healthcare, telemedicine, telestroke, the ability to have remote diagnostics via mobile device back to the mainline hospital. Education in terms of distance learning, in terms of using this remote technology and mobile technology in areas where teachers are not en masse.
Right.
Manufacturing, retail, customer service. Many vertical applications are driving this. In fact, 50% of our business is founded on telemedicine and remote distance learning. And that whole aspect of now being mobile with wireless carriers is now open up the floodgates. And the reason that we're so keen on this announcement around real presence mobility is for the first time you can not only go mobile to mobile, but mobile back into these enterprise applications to drive that productivity and drive that.
And it's all businesses of all sizes too. It's just not, you know, the enterprise. It's small business, medium, and now
it's consumer, small to medium business. Mid-market, vertical applications.
And then bring in the cloud and this is where we're headed.
I think it's spectacular, and that's what I think the show reflects. That is that you've got this, and it really is almost like an ecosystem within the wireless universe that's here and is feeding off of itself.
The mHealth presence here at this particular show is much bigger than it has been in the past. I know we've got the big conference coming up in DC here in December, but when you talk about vertical markets, there's that's got to be a perfect scenario for you, that the mHealth arena.
Well, it's from a philanthropic perspective, it's very important in terms of how we can help change healthcare and how it's delivered, and providing, frankly, ubiquitous healthcare across the world. So it's an important part of giving back, but also from a industry perspective, it is actually changing the way that remote clinicians, that remote physicians, that remote nurse practitioners are actually delivering healthcare to people that are not in metropolitan areas.
And especially when you look at what it's able to do, we've had a case study of a small rural setting in Idaho using healthcare 200 miles away, having OBGYN access to top flight medical care, but yet in a rural setting, saving them time and the effort and the money and tremendous savings in that respect, but also giving equal access to that advanced care. And if you look at what can happen in terms of remote monitoring through cardiac patients, diabetes patients, senior citizens, elderly monitoring, I mean, that's just the tip of the iceberg. And then how we're all going to bring that together in terms of the device integration so that my blood pressure reader and my diabetes reader and my cardiac monitoring, all those things, I don't need 10 or 12 devices. I'm going to come to one central hub and distribute it to my healthcare provider, who might be 50 miles away or 100 miles away.
How does this reflect back into the automotive industry?
Oh, I think obviously there's a lot of location-based services that are going to be fed into the automobile. I think Cadillac's going to be here on Wednesday talking a great deal about that. And Ford obviously has already had a big impact in that regard. And they've made it part of their business plan going forward, very overt about that. So I think people have some concerns, like too much input, too much stuff, get in the car and I want to cool down a little bit. But at the same time, the telematics, I think, are really attuned to that safety factor and finding ways to make our lives much more efficient, make our like awareness of our car, diagnostics, knowing when tire pressure's down, knowing when the engine needs repaired, knowing when our brakes are low. All of that information can be collected and then disseminated in an appropriate way and make us safer and save us money.
I think there's so many vertical markets. In automotive, I think of three. I think in the not-too-distant future, you will have video capability inside the automobile, not for the driver, but for the passengers, in terms of communication. Right. You will have mobile applications on the assembly line manufacturing floor to be able to quickly and instantaneously look at remote diagnostics rather than a picture sent back to corporate. You'll be able to see real-time with video conferencing supply chain on the assembly floor. So if you just imagine taking out the video aspect of what people traditionally think as video conference in a conference room. Right. Now you take that out to a mobile device and extend that experience, whether it's healthcare, education, assembly line, whether it's a fabric manufacturer in China, talking to a designer in Paris in terms of being able to look at with camera technology in terms of what that fabric looks like rather than sending a swatch back. That whole productivity improvement is happening right in front of us.
And you touched on another good point, Andy, I think, is that it's about machine to machine.
I mean, machine to machine, absolutely.
That is probably, well, I shouldn't say, that is certainly going to be one of the great business opportunities. It's going to be one of the fastest growing marketplaces. We spend a lot of time here, again, looking at that and talking about that. And I know a lot of our carriers are also, have very robust operations with regard to machine communication, because you know, how do our kitchen appliances talk to each other? Why is that information useful?
Connected life.
How do I better control my life, control my costs, make it more comfortable, understand where I have deficiencies or efficiencies in my machinery, and then how does that integrate with my, you know, my kids, my family, my parents, my job. We're surrounded by machines. And
let's wrap that structure all back with policy and controls and procedures. How are we going to be able to manage all that? Is the CTIA going to help us do that?
Well, I think we have a role in that for sure, in terms of bringing together, when it's appropriate, policymakers to talk about not only the opportunities, but the challenges as well, and to address them in an industry-wide fashion, to find best practices that make sense, to find standards that make sense, but at the same time, don't inhibit the marketplace. We've seen just this flourishing of innovation in so many respects. Certainly, we don't want to impede that. You want to nurture that environment, and we would say to policymakers, others, don't get too heavy-handed here. Let the market work, because that's what it does. And in this industry, I think there's a great track record of that.
And I think that, Andy, you could echo that sentiment quite well with that. Let's move back to that vertical marketplace and where Polycom's going to fit in there, and making sure that those policy and controls are malleable to not inhibit innovation, but are still being structured enough to allow Polycom to grow.
Sure. I mean, I would go back to the whole open standard interoperability aspect is key. One of the things that we've have been shepherding is what's called OVCC, which is the Open Communication Visual Consortium. And this consortium is about bringing together the largest carriers in the world to operate and bring forth the largest public and private clouds that allow the ability to transport video technology from carrier to carrier. And that type of consortium, that type of aspect of open cloud, interoperable, open standard, with the spectrum issue kind of combined, are the two governors that have held back the growth of this industry in terms of from a collaborative communication perspective. If those two can be addressed, the open standard, the interoperability, the spectrum issues, and then the approach of being agnostic no matter what smartphone or pad it's on, then you're going to see some very substantial growth in these vertical market applications really taking off much faster than they have in the past.
Which inevitably equates back to better economics for the globe. Or ultimately.
We'd like to play our piece in it.
And some final words from you?
Just looking forward to getting the show started here. Actually, this is always an exciting day for us, because there's a lot of work that goes into it. We think, again, that the Enterprise and App Show makes a lot of sense. It's carving out a unique space right now in the industry and provides a great platform for the development community to come together with suppliers and carriers and everybody who's involved in that and work in a more collaborative fashion to take this all forward. As Andy said, there are a lot of pieces to it, and there's just so much upside and so much potential that, with all due respect, I'm glad we're not with the asphalt folks. You know, I mean, this is a lot of fun.
That's fair enough. Yeah. I could echo that quite easily. And finally, some final words from you as well, Andy, for Polycom.
No, it's just exciting for us to be here, because this, as I said before, this is our first time in mobility. We've spent almost the last 2 years getting ready for this event in terms of our products, our technology, our work with Apple and Samsung and Motorola. So it's an exciting time. We're looking forward to launching a very unique and differentiated application and being part of the process.
Andy, congratulations on the Real Presence news release this morning. Fantastic product, and I hope we get a chance for an update again in the future. John, congratulations on a fantastic show.
Thanks for having us.
Very much appreciate the opportunity for both of you gentlemen to come speak with us here today, and we hope we get a chance to do it again, maybe in next year's time. I have been speaking with Andy Miller, the CEO of Polycom, and John Wells, VP for CTIA Affairs. I am Tony Sklar, here from the show floor of the CTIA Enterprise Applications Forum for bnetTV.